Who helped their stock and who hurt it during the Baltimore Ravens 16-13 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1 of the 2024 preseason? We talk about that and so much more coming up next here on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this bonus edition here on Saturday and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. So in audio form, if you like to listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to listen, we have you covered over there. And also in video form, it's the same show, both audio and video, so you can hit that like button and subscribe over on YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, Monday through Friday, but we also do bonus episodes like this one. We do live game reactions. We had our game reaction to the preseason game late last night, so if you haven't checked out that instant reaction, be sure to check that out as well. We also do reactions to every piece of Ravens big news. We have it covered pretty much all things Ravens, so tell a friend, tell a family member. We'd really appreciate that. And the Ravens football, we have it back in full swing now. It is officially back. The Ravens, they unfortunately lose 16-13 to the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1 of the 2024 preseason. But again, wins and losses don't necessarily matter all that much. In fact, they do not matter when it comes to the preseason. What does matter is the performances of these guys. So in the first part of the show, we're going to be talking about guys who helped their stock, who really improved what I thought. They played well. They did a good job. We'll talk about those guys. In the second part of the show, we'll move more into the stock down players who didn't help themselves and who now needs more to be able to make this roster. And then finally, we'll be getting into Nate Wiggins and his update. And so it'll just be a free-flowing show here today on this bonus episode. So let's get into it. I mean, I said we'll talk about Wiggins, right, in the final part of the show, but we have to talk about him now, right? Because, look, injury aside, and we'll get to that, it's a big part of this. But at the time of this recording, I don't know what's going on with Nate Wiggins. So it's anybody's guess right now. It could be anything from a stinger to a torn labrum to anything like that. Let's hope it's on the lower end of that. But we don't know. But what we do know is Nate Wiggins performed and balled out in this game against Philadelphia. And look, this is what was expected. If you're the Ravens, this is exactly what you wanted to see. If you're the Ravens, this is what you expected from Nate Wiggins. And if I'm Baltimore, I'm pleased with what I saw out of him. He was sticky in coverage. He was playing with that fire, that tenacity. And Wiggins is a guy that goes in there, right? He comes in and just provides a spark. He had 3 pass breakups on very early in the game. And I thought was really sticky in coverage with those, where it's, he was stuck to the receiver. I think if he got his head around on one, he would have had an interception. On that first one, I know he got a little grabby, but it was marginal enough to where the officials didn't call it. But again, he was sticking with guys. That's the thing that stood out to me is he used his recovery speed well. He used his speed overall well. And again, the Eagles didn't have A.J. Brown out there. They didn't have Devonta Smith out there. This is what you expected from a high pedigree corner in Nate Wiggins. If he didn't have a performance like this, it would have been a little concerning if he had struggled. So for Nate Wiggins, he was the star of the show for the Ravens on Friday because he showed everything that I think a lot of people know that he can do anyway. Like, this is what Nate Wiggins can do. This is who Nate Wiggins is, a fast corner, someone who can be sticky in coverage, someone who doesn't get beat very easily. And honestly, his speed, right? It's something that not a lot of other corners can replicate in this game. So He's a player that I think will be a very valuable player to the Ravens over the course of the season. Again, hopefully that injury does not impact him and his regular season availability, but that does remain to be seen at this point here. But another guy who I thought did a really, really good job was Owen Wright. Owen Wright, to me, he improved his stock tremendously. That arrow was pointing straight up for Owen Wright. Look, I mean, when coming into this preseason, he was a guy that was getting a lot of hype coming out of camp. We had Jess Rebeck on this show yesterday. We had that for our morning show, our 6 a.m. episode. We had guys like Paul Mancano on, Nikhil Mehta on. We had others as well. Melissa Kim, she was talking about Owen Wright. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about him as just this player that, has come in and really done a lot of great things for the Ravens. And he comes into this preseason game and does not miss a beat, right? Someone who I think a lot of people were wondering about him, right? Could he take over that third running back spot from Rasheen Ali? And we'll get to Rasheen Ali a little later, but I think Owen Wright did a phenomenal job. He looked quick. He looked fast. He had burst to him. He was hitting the hole really hard. And that's all the stuff you want to see. Plus, he does have value on special teams as well. So Wright's official final stats, he actually also flashed in the pass game, 1 reception for 17 yards, but finished this game with, it was incredible as I pull it up here quickly. It was 7 carries for 33 yards, averaged almost 5 yards per carry. So again, with Melissa and Jeff and Paul and Nikhil and all these guys, Valerie Preactor we had on as well. Everybody that I've had on here in the past week or so has talked about Owen Wright in some way, shape, or form, or at least alluded to the fact that on offense, some of these underrated guys could really take a step forward, and all of them had great analysis on it. So this was not necessarily a shock to me that Owen Wright was doing this, but he looked the part of a third running back. And if the Ravens only keep 3 running backs, I think he is now ahead of Rasheen Ali, which we will again get to as this goes on. I thought Dayton Wade overall, kind of like that arrow kind of pointing up. He had that drop early in the game, or at least early-ish in the game, where again, it's a classic thing that happens with drops where he had his hands out and he was about to catch the ball, but he started looking up the field. He started looking the other way, like, all right, I'm going to run with this ball before he had the ball in his hands. And that obviously usually contributes pretty largely to a drop, but he recovered and ended up leading the Ravens in receiving yards and receptions, 4 for 27 for Dayton Wade. Again, these Ravens quarterbacks were not pushing the ball down the field, which I would have loved to see that. Honestly, Tez Walker really didn't get involved. He had 1 target in this game. I mean, the Ravens overall, when you see it's, you average 6.8 yards per reception, not the best number, but I think he hooked up with Devin Leary on a 13-yard completion, on an 11-yard completion, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So I thought Dayton Wade recovered nicely, because some guys in those moments, right, you have a bad drop, you're an undrafted guy trying to make the roster. Some guys shrink after that. But Dayton Wade stepped up, and honestly, it was a really cool moment to kind of see him respond to that. Tylan Wallace also, I think his stock is up, and we talked with Jeff about that yesterday morning too, where he's a guy that I think is probably the favorite for that 6th wide receiver spot. Obviously, Russell Gage was signed. They apparently signed Anthony Miller as well. But the thing with these back-end players, like on the back end, you're talking about wide receiver 6s, safety 4s, corner 6s. These guys have to have special teams value, right? Like even running back 3, running back 4. Those guys have to have special teams value for this Ravens team. Tylan Wallace obviously has that. He made a tackle on special teams as well. And he had an incredible 19-yard reception, which was one of the better catches of the entire day, if we're being honest. So I thought he did enough to get a pretty firm grip on that 6th wide receiver spot. And then on the defensive side of the ball, there are a couple of other guys, and we'll probably split this up here. But I think one, Trenton Simpson, we talked about Nate Wiggins, but Trenton Simpson was a guy that had 11 total tackles in this game, was flying all around the field, was all around the ball. He was someone who played really well downhill in this game, was getting off of blocks, evading blocks. He was everywhere. And that's what the Ravens need from him. That's what they need next to Roquan, right? Patrick Queen was awesome next to Roquan, and Roquan gives you that bump, right? Roquan elevates you. But Trenton Simpson has his own skills. He is extremely fast. He's quick to the ball. He's able to diagnose. And there's going to be some level of growing pains for a lot of these young guys, right? I think once we get to the regular season, Trenton Simpson might have some trouble diagnosing here and there as it gets to, the meat of the regular season games. But this was really encouraging. And again, we've seen him really in two major moments, or at least in his career. It's been that Week 18 Pittsburgh game, and it's been this game. And both times he has aced his audition, if you want to call it that. So I thought Trenton Simpson was awesome. And on that same vein, I thought Josh Ross was really good in this game too. He was all around the ball, finished with 8 total tackles. He was second leading on the team. And it just felt like he was in the right place at the right time and just didn't make mistakes. It felt like he always wrapped up the ball carrier when he was there, didn't miss tackles, if I'm not mistaken. He was all over the place. So that inside linebacker duo of Trenton Simpson and Josh Ross certainly had a bunch of plays today. Coming up, though, we're going to be continuing to round out who improved their stock and then getting into who hurt their stock in this game against Philadelphia. Stay tuned. We got a lot to get to here on this bonus episode of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has it covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need are the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items will exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Saturday bonus edition episode of the show. Really appreciate everybody again for being here today, taking some time out of your weekend to listen, watch this episode of the show. It means a lot to me. Hopefully everybody's having a good weekend so far. It didn't start off, in the win column for the Ravens here, but look, I think it's a win that Ravens football is back in general, because wins and losses in the preseason, again, they don't mean anything when it comes to regular season. It's about performance, right? But it's really cool just to kind of dive into all of this. And as I was actually, the gears were turning at the end of that first segment, and I remembered I didn't talk about the offensive line. We got to talk about the offensive line. That's a huge storyline. So we'll put the pause on the defense stock up for just a second here as we dive for a couple minutes into the offensive line. I thought Andrew Voorhees was awesome in this game. I thought he anchored really well, held his own, didn't give up anything. It felt like he belonged. And he obviously has that really strong grip on the left guard position. I think he did more to solidify that. That to me, it's not set in stone officially, but to me, it's set in stone that Voorhees is going to win that left guard job. And again, and this is something I've said a lot, if you're an everyday, you've heard me say it, but if you remember back after the Ravens drafted him in the 7th round, they traded back up to take him. They had said, and there were reports that were leaked out that said the Ravens were confident enough to take him and that he would be there. That they were confident enough that he could be their starter this season, right? They said that last year. And he's making them look 100% right. He was a 3rd to 4th round pick coming out of USC. And I thought it was a really solid performance in his first NFL action back from the injury. Because there's always that question. There's always the wonder, right? Of how is the guy going to respond? Is he going to be the same player? And I thought Voorhees showed everything and more. So really impressed by him. I thought Roger Rosengarten held his own too. His stock is definitely up. I know he was in a rotation with Patrick McCary, but again, we know the foot speed is there. We know he's a great pass protector, and for his first NFL action, I would say held up pretty well. And we know the Ravens do love Patrick McCary and that super sub offensive line role, the 6th guy. So Rosengarten to me is, again, it's not official yet, but I would probably pencil him in there. So those two guys really impressed me. And also, I thought Ben Cleveland was fine, right? I think he's kind of, his arrow's pointing up a little bit too. I thought he, held his own at center, and it's a position that he's learning. So I give him credit for stepping in there and doing the job he did. So even for a guy like Ben Cleveland, I thought he performed decently well on Friday. Now back to defense. We'll go back to defense here quickly. Other guys who I thought did really well in this game. Joe Evans I thought did well. Undrafted guy out of Iowa, had 6 tackles in this game. And there is a potential shot he does make this roster potentially. If the Ravens decide to keep 6 outside linebackers, personally, I think that is 1 too many. I think 5 is probably the sweet spot for them. I think if it's 6, and this kind of goes to the running back 4 conversation as well we'll have, but if you keep a extra outside linebacker, an extra running back, that's an extra offensive lineman, spot that's not available, an extra secondary spot that's not available, maybe tight end, wide receiver, whatever it may be, you have to balance that out. I think Joe Evans is a really, really good practice squad candidate, does have the shot to make the roster. Do not get me wrong there. And I thought he was really, really good. He had a couple of really good pass rushes and was, again, all around the ball. So I thought he was good. Sanusi came before he left with an injury, had a couple of really good special teams tackles. And that's what I talked about earlier, where those back end of the roster guys, back end of the depth chart, they have to have value on special teams on this team. And Sanusi Kane made a name for himself there, did have the personal foul penalty, and you obviously cannot lead with the crown of your helmet into the head, neck, shoulder area of a player. That's going to be a foul 10 times out of 10. And he ended up hurting himself, and he has a stinger. And one more note, I guess, for the injuries is Chris Board ended up getting a concussion, and he was ruled out for the game after that. I thought that Pepe Williams had a pretty good game. 3 tackles, had a sack on that corner blitz. He and Ardarius Washington, not that Washington was bad or anything, but he and Washington are going to be competing for that slot corner spot while Arthur Millette is out. And regardless of how long that is, one of those guys is probably going to have to step into that role. They can obviously throw Marlon Humphrey in the slot if they want to. They have other options they can bring down there. It doesn't just have to be a 1-for-1 replacement, but I would expect whichever one of those guys wins that job to play a decently big role while Arthur Millette is out. I thought Jalen Armour-Davis had an up and down game. He's kind of a push to me. I thought that Devin Leary was kind of a push to me as well. Other than that, though, Daryl Worley, I thought, had a pretty decent game. Tavius Robinson, I thought, was okay as well. Bo Braid, I thought, played pretty well as well. Bo Braid is definitely a stock-up guy for me. He had a couple of really nice plays, and again, might not make the roster, but I think as a practice squad option could be really, really good as well. So, yeah, look, I think the other guy we got to mention here is Travis Jones in terms of stock up, just because, it seemed like every time I zoned in on him and just solely watched him on a play, he was bullying his offensive lineman, pushing him back into the backfield, shedding a block, getting in the quarterback's face, run stuffing, if you've been listening to me on Locked On Ravens here, Travis Jones has been my breakout pick for months for this team for the 2024 season. And he is certainly, he looked the part 1000%. Trying to see if I missed anybody here on the stock up portion of things before we move kind of into the stock down. I don't think so. I think we covered everybody. I thought overall performance wise, the outcome was a loss, but I thought out of the loss, a lot of guys did perform well. Yeah, I think I hit on everybody. So moving to the stock down portion again, that doesn't mean the loss came without poor performances. There certainly were. And I think the first we can start with is Josh Johnson. Was a pretty poor performance from Johnson. Went 4 for 12 for 62 yards. And John Harbaugh kind of talked about this in the post game where he said, well, look, it's harder to evaluate quarterbacks at this point in the preseason because, sometimes the wrong route was run or there was something else that wasn't in the quarterback's control. And I get it, right? I'm not pinning everything on Josh Johnson, but I certainly am pinning a decent amount of it on him because, for a veteran, someone who's been around the league, I get he's up there in age, but I did expect more. I thought he had a couple of nice plays. Wasn't all terrible from Josh Johnson, of course, but some of the throws to the flat were off and, there were some overthrows and it didn't look good. And it has sparked the conversation. And we'll definitely be talking about it throughout the next week here on Locked On Ravens is what do the Ravens do at the backup quarterback position? Do the Ravens have a backup quarterback problem? And what do they do? Because Johnson did not look good. Devin Leary really didn't look good. Again, I called it a push because he did lead the Ravens on their only touchdown drive of the game. Emory Jones had one play, and it was a fumble that had the Eagles win the game. I don't think I even talked about how they won the game on this show yet, where the Ravens, Jake Elliott hits the upright on a 50-yarder. Emory Jones comes in on all right, let's see what we can get play and get stripped. So a strip sack recovered by Philadelphia. Jake Elliott comes right back out there and drills the winning field goal. So, yeah, it was, not a great day performance-wise for the quarterbacks. And I know Ryan Tannehill's name has been floated out a bunch. I saw Cam Newton a bunch in the live show chat. So, look, there's going to be that conversation of, well, what happens? And one note on the backup quarterback position thing. We know that Lamar Jackson is this team's lifeblood. We know that he is the thing that makes the gears turn, especially on offense. If Lamar is lost for any amount of time and he has to miss games, and knock on wood, that does not happen. But if it does, it lowers the floor and the ceiling by a pretty wide margin. But this defense is good enough and the pieces around Lamar are good enough to where if he has to go down, if there is a competent backup quarterback, they can still compete, right? Won't be the same compete as with Lamar in there, but they can still compete in some way, shape, or form, even though, again, you're competing with Lamar up here or the backup, it's probably down there. But is that Josh Johnson? Because, again, if Lamar gets injured, it hurts the Ravens' Super Bowl chances exponentially. But they're not just going to throw in the towel. And so would Josh Johnson be that guy? I also saw, and I kind of brought up that Tyler Huntley's the fourth quarterback in Cleveland right now. And I don't even think he makes the roster unless they keep 4. So it'd be hilarious if he came back to Baltimore after, kind of the whole conversation that was had about him. Another guy whose stock was down, Rasheen Ali, at 10 for 26 on the ground, 2.6 yards per carry. He struggled to get the ball in the end zone. In fact, he failed to get the ball in the end zone on 3 straight tries from the 1-yard line, I believe it was. Almost had a fumble on a return, but the officials ruled that it was caused by the ground, which was the correct call. It was. But again, if you're talking about Owen Wright and how impressive he looked, Rasheen Ali needed a pretty good performance, and he didn't have it. He had the opportunity to score a touchdown multiple times. He didn't take it. Didn't run with his head down on the right purpose there. So it was a rough day for Rasheen Ali for sure. And then I think the one everybody is talking about here is Daniel Faalele. Faalele did not look good on Friday. Did not look like a guard. Looked out of place. Still looked very raw. And he's learning a new position, right? So there is, I do cut him a little bit of slack there. But I cut him slack because we're in the preseason. In the regular season, I don't think he's a guard, right? The Ravens have been experimenting. I kind of liken this to what happened last season because no one really expected Faalele a guard, right? Remember last year when Salah was getting starts at left guard when they were still trying to figure that out? And everyone was like, whoa, the 6th-round rookie who, everybody knows is a project is getting, first-team reps. I think that's kind of what's happening with Faalele, but they don't trust him at tackle, apparently, because he's not in the competition for that job. I don't know what's going on there. He's playing at guard, and they're trying to get him reps there. I think Ben Cleveland is the starter right now, if we're being honest. And I know, look, they were sniffing around offensive line help. They certainly need to figure it out there. I think 4 or 5 offensive line slots are all but filled with Stanley, Voorhees, Linderbaum, and Rosengarten. But that right guard spot is certainly the biggest question mark, one of the biggest question marks on the entire team right now. So that's all I had for stock down, guys. Emory Jones obviously was the one play, but we got to give him more of a shot than just the one play, right? I know it was bad, and he is a stock down guy, deservedly so because of that. But it was one play when they were trying to get something down the field. So it's not. It wasn't a great performance by him, obviously, but I would like to see what he does in more extended action. Coming up though in the final part of the show, we'll get into some other notes from this game. We have other injury updates. David Ajabo is one in particular we'll get into. Plus, obviously, the big one is Nate Wiggins. We'll talk about that and more. Stay tuned. We got plenty to talk about on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's finding jobs, networking, connecting. LinkedIn has it all. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals who can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job. Might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn or looking in the wrong place, on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. and 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Push your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to push your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And for me, for others as well, there are self-care non-negotiables. Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it sometimes. But when you feel like you're having no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. And therapy has so many benefits, whether it's learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It can empower you to becoming the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who experience major trauma, it's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher is still with you on this Saturday bonus edition. Baltimore again loses 16-13 to the Eagles in week 1 of the 2024 preseason, but Ravens football is officially back. Felt really good to do a instant reaction post-game episode. It was the first one since that horrid AFC Championship loss to Kansas City. And just getting back in the saddle, doing those. Again, we do go live after every single Ravens game, after every single piece of Ravens big news. So again, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, turn those notifications on, but also be sure to listen to us in audio form as well, wherever you get your podcasts. We're adding a new thing this year to Locked On Ravens, game day episodes. So 6 a.m. on game days, particularly obviously this is for Sunday. We'll have a Sunday game day episode out at 6 a.m. to take you up to kickoff on Sundays. That just kind of feed into the excitement of all of that. And also on Monday, I just want to keep pushing it home here, coming up on my 5-year anniversary of hosting this show. August 12th, 2019, when I started doing this thing, my first episode was about Kari Vedvik, the throwback name, right? I'm telling you, that is a preseason legend, preseason Ravens legend, Kari Vedvik. So we'll talk about that when it comes to Monday, but we still got a lot to talk about when it comes to this Ravens preseason game. Let's first get into a couple of other notes, and then obviously we'll address the big news, what we hope will not be big news and just be he's good, but Nate Wiggins is the big topic of conversation. But David Ojabo, John Harbaugh revealed after the game has not been cleared medically to play in games yet. He's 8 to 9 months removed from that ACL tear he suffered towards the beginning of the year last year. And, it was disappointing to not see him on the field. Obviously, if you're not cleared, you're not cleared, right? Like, oh, yeah, that's fine. But we know that Ojabo coming out of college was a project from Michigan. He has a ton of talent, a ton of pass rushing moves. It's all there. You're just learning that process and get acclimated with it. It can be tough, and he's missed essentially almost 2 full seasons of football. And, they need him to step up and be their number 3. The Ravens had such a luxury last year, and they could afford, they lost Ojabo to the ACL, and it didn't necessarily hinder him all that much because obviously Kava and Noy is breaking out, but they had Jadeveon Clowney, and that took pressure off of both Odafe Owe and David Ojabo. So, there's not that luxury this season. Van Noy is back in town, but Clowney is out. Clowney's gone. So they need Ojabo to step up as their third guy, or is that going to be Tavius Robinson? Or, Adisa Isaac isn't ready yet. So I do expect them to go out there and look for some level of veteran help, much like they did with Van Noy and Clowney last year. Maybe it does come in the season. But with Ojabo, it's a little bit of a big question mark for the Ravens. And then I do wish we would have seen more Tez Walker in this game. Again, only 1 target. And the Ravens didn't really throw the ball deep. I wish we had seen some more deep shots in this game. I know that, the Ravens, Zach Ward came out in a very, very simplistic defensive shell this game. He did not show anything. Todd Monk is not going to show anything either. This is very much like, okay, let's get guys in a rhythm. Let's see what they have. They're not pulling out all the stops in these games, but even just straight go routes, just getting guys involved that way, that would be something I would like to see in these next 2 games coming up. But all right, let's get to the Nate Wiggins injury here. So Wiggins ended up coming out after halftime and playing in that first defensive series and made a great play, great 3rd down stop. Came up and was kind of raising his arms a little bit in celebration, not all the way up, but was, just raising them up a little bit. you can kind of tell he felt something and went into the medical tent, was deemed questionable with a shoulder injury. He was walking down to the locker room and the Ravens broadcast showed the video, and they said that he wasn't really moving his arm or his shoulder. And on the video, you can clearly see that's the case as well. And again, so at the time of this recording, I don't know anything. We don't know anything. So I'm sure there'll be some level of an update today. And if it is serious, we will go live on Locked On Ravens and we'll react and we'll break it down. But this could be anything. This could be a stinger. The thing that does concern me a little bit, though, is that Sanusi Canes was classified as a stinger, and Nate Wiggins, his injury was not. So does that rule that out? Is this a labrum injury? Is this a collarbone injury? Is it a pec injury? Is it a neck thing? Like, there are so many different outcomes here. And we don't know because there's still further testing to be done. You know, we can say, oh, well, it could be this or it could be that based off the reaction. I mean, if it's a stinger, you probably miss a week or two. If it's a collarbone type deal, you probably miss 1 to 2 months. Like if it's broken. If it's a labrum, you probably miss 2 to 3 months. If it's a pec, it just depends on recovery time. We know Marcus Williams came back from that. If it's a neck thing, it depends what the injury is. Again, there's so much speculation, but what we do know is that Nate Wiggins is very valuable to this team, even just through one preseason game, because of his speed, first of all, as we talked about, but also the fact that those 3 cornerback rotations with Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, and Nate Wiggins, those are those plays, those multiple defensive back packages the Ravens love to run, and I expect to see more multiple defensive back packages this season with Patrick Queen no longer with the team. So you're not married, if you're the Ravens, to keeping 2 inside linebackers on the field 24/7. Now, if Trenton Simpson plays the way he did tonight, you might have to in terms of what happened. And it's going to be interesting. But, yeah, I feel like there's such a wide range of outcomes. It's so hard to predict. And I don't want to speculate and say, oh, he has this, because I don't know. I have no information. I wish I had an update. I don't. I know everybody else wants to have an update. I know everybody else doesn't as well. So we just got to kind of hold our breath collectively here and hope for the best, start the prayer circles up and go with that. So that'll be the next big news is Nate Wiggins. Obviously, if everything is all good, everything is all good. If it's a stinger, hopefully he just misses a little bit of time. Hopefully he is all good, though, with that. But that's all I have for you here today on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. And really appreciate everybody tuning in. If there is a serious update with Nate Wiggins, we will go live and react to that at some point, probably today, maybe tomorrow. But whenever that comes out, we will plan accordingly. And then, of course, we'll be back here on Monday with your regularly scheduled Locked On Ravens programming. Again, my 5 years will be that episode. So really excited for that one. We have a lot still to dive into on the show, breaking down the preseason game against the Eagles and looking ahead to the Falcons. But again, be sure to subscribe, like this video form, audio form, tell a friend, tell a family member. If they want daily Ravens coverage, we have them covered. We got a lot to get to. Again, stay tuned. I'll see you back here soon on Locked On Ravens.